The smell of smoky ribs drifted through the cool mountain air, mixing with the sound of laughter, arguments over barbecue sauce, and the clinking of beer bottles against the wooden porch railing. My cabin, which I had inherited from my grandfather, stood tall and quiet in the middle of the pines. Normally, it was a place of peace, but today it was alive with the sound of my old SWAT teammate men and women who had once lived on the razor's edge together, pulling hostages out of burning buildings, chasing cartel smugglers through border towns, and facing gunfire in the darkest corners of Colorado. Tonight, though, we weren't soldiers or heroes. We were just friends, celebrating 15 years of survival with ribs, beer, and bad jokes. Tony Rodriguez, our sniper, was arguing with Sarah Mitchell, our explosives expert, about which barbecue sauce was tactically superior. Everyone was laughing, the kind of deep-belly laughter that only comes from people who have survived hell together and lived to joke about it. I was at the grill, tongs in hand, soaking in the moment. My grandfather's cabin had always felt safe to me, almost sacred. It was the one place where I could breathe without looking over my shoulder, but that peace shattered in an instant.
If you like this video, smash that thumbs up and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next.
The wooden door slammed so hard it rattled the glass in the windows. 3 men stormed inside, dressed in mismatched uniforms that looked like they had been bought from a thrift store. Their leader, a scrawny guy with an upside-down badge, raised what looked like a handgun and shouted, "This is an illegal armed gathering. Everyone stay where you are." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Behind him, through the glass door, stood a woman I knew all too well, Patricia Blackwood, the HOA president of this area. She was leaning against her Mercedes with her arms crossed, wearing the same smug, cruel smile she always wore whenever she thought she had one. For years, she had made my life miserable, nitpicking about grass length, mailbox color, and imaginary violations, all while trying to pressure me into selling my grandfather's cabin. She was a control freak with too much money and too much time, and now it looked like she had gone off the deep end. The officers in my living room were laughable. One had sneakers instead of boots. Another had a badge with the word Toy 01 stamped on it. And the so-called leader's pistol had a bright yellow nozzle dripping something that looked suspiciously like cherry Kool-Aid. The radio strapped to his shoulder was a plastic toy walkie-talkie, Keem. Seasoned by years of dealing with real terrorists and real guns, instantly spotted the fraud. I put down my tongs and stepped forward slowly, my voice calm but firm. "Gentlemen, I think there might be some confusion here. Mind if I take a look at those badges?" The leader stammered, his eyes darting nervously from one of us to another. My teammates were already moving with a grace that only came from endless missions together. Sarah tilted her head, her sharp eyes studying every detail, while Tony quietly pulled out his phone and hit record. The others spread out, turning the wooden deck and living room into a tactical battlefield without a single word spoken. Sarah suddenly burst out laughing. "Are you serious? Weapons possession. Buddy, the only weapon here is my steak knife, and it's sharper than whatever that thing is in your hand." The man's face turned red. His hands shook. Then, with a clatter, his plastic pistol fell onto the wooden deck. "We're just actors, man. Don't shoot, please." The other 2 followed quickly, dropping their toy cuffs and raising their hands. "We were hired." The leader babbled. "Some lady paid us $500 each to pretend to arrest you. Said it was part of a documentary about HOA safety." I turned my head just enough to make sure Patricia could hear me through the window. My voice carried like a hammer hitting steel. "Gentlemen, meet Colorado SWAT Alpha. 15 years of putting real criminals in real prisons. You made a very bad career choice tonight." The actors collapsed under the weight of their own fear. Within seconds, they were spilling everything: how Patricia had hired them through a local casting agency called Mountain View, how she had handed them fake IDs, and even how she had given them a 20-page script complete with lines they were supposed to shout during the raid. Tony filmed the whole thing, making sure every word was documented. Patricia's smile cracked like glass. I watched her face change from smug triumph to pale panic as her little charade unraveled in front of her. But Sarah, ever the detective, wasn't laughing anymore. She had found something far more serious. In the contract the actors carried, there was a list of 15 other properties in the area all belonging to families who had either been forced to sell or dragged into legal disputes with Patricia's HOA in the past 2 years. "That's not random," Sarah whispered to me, her face grim. "That's a pattern." The pieces clicked in my head like a magazine slamming into a rifle. Patricia wasn't just harassing me. She was running people out of this area, systematically clearing the land. But for what? Before I could ask, Patricia made the mistake of yelling. "You idiots, I paid you to arrest them, not beg for mercy. $500 each, you were supposed to clear them out." Her own words were her undoing. Tony's camera caught everything, and the actors, terrified of what they had stumbled into, handed over payment receipts that led straight to a shell company called Western Development Solutions. A quick online check showed the website had been created just a week ago. Patricia thought she was playing chess, but in reality, she had just handed us the queen. That's when a weathered man in paint-stained work clothes stepped out from the tree line. He introduced himself as Tommy Rodriguez. His voice shook with anger as he explained that he had once owned 10 acres next to my cabin until Patricia's harassment drove him off. He told us about the large trucks with Mexican plates sneaking into the woods at night, guarded by armed men. He even showed us grainy photos on his old phone. The truth hit me like a sucker punch. This wasn't about HOA fines or neighborhood pride. Patricia was clearing out homeowners because the land wasn't for houses, it was for drugs. My grandfather's land, my safe place, sat on top of something far darker than I ever imagined. Sarah called one of her D-contacts, and within minutes, our worst fear was confirmed. The forest surrounding my cabin was a known hub for cartel activity, and the caves beneath the property were the perfect hiding spot for an underground drug warehouse. Patricia wasn't just a bitter old woman on a power trip. She was the American manager of an international drug trafficking network, and she had been using her HOA as a weapon to control the land. And then, almost like a ghost from the past, my grandfather's voice echoed in my memory. "If you ever find trouble at the cabin," he had once told me in his final weeks, "check the old steamer trunk in the basement." I left Sarah and the team upstairs and rushed down to the cellar. Dust filled the air as I dragged the heavy trunk into the light. Inside, my hands shook as I pulled out de-identification cards, surveillance equipment, and a leather-bound journal. My grandfather, Judge William Garrett, had not been retired the way everyone believed. He had been undercover, working with the D for years, secretly building a case against the cartel. The journal was filled with detailed notes, times, dates, names, shipments, murders. It was all there. He had created a surveillance system hidden within the cabin itself, with live feeds from cameras placed throughout the caves. When I powered it on, screens lit up, showing cartel soldiers moving crates, cash, and cocaine deep under the mountain. The server held terabytes of evidence, enough to cripple the Juarez cartel's entire Western operation. But the most chilling part was his final entry, labeled Operation Grandfather's Revenge. My grandfather had built a dead man's Swishaw system designed to automatically trigger a federal response if anyone tried to silence him. All I had to do was activate it. Before I could decide, Patricia returned, but this time she wasn't playing games. 3 black SUVs pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, flanked by 2 cartel bodyguards with dead eyes, the kind of men who had killed more than once without losing sleep. "Mr. Garrett," she said coldly, "I think it's time we had a proper conversation about your future in this community." Only she had no idea that the D was already on its way, thanks to my grandfather's plan. When Patricia ordered her men to move the cocaine out of the caves, she got the surprise of her life. Instead of drugs, she stumbled out, covered in flour. We had swapped the entire load days earlier, replacing it with bags labeled organic, non-GMO whole wheat. Her soldiers froze in shock, just long enough for the forest to erupt with movement. 80 federal agents stormed the property in full tactical gear. Operation Dragon Lockdown had begun. The gunfight was short and brutal. My team moved like the unit we had once been. Sarah picked off cartel soldiers with precise shots. Tony provided overwatch from the roof. And the rest of us cut through the chaos with years of combat discipline. Patricia screamed orders, but her empire was collapsing around her. Her own men turned on her when they discovered she had been skimming money from the cartel. And before the D even touched her, 3 bullets from her allies tore into her shoulder and chest. The woman who had tormented her neighbors was left bleeding out in my driveway, betrayed by the same monsters she had served. And then came the final twist. Her own son, Michael Blackwood, stepped out of the shadows wearing a D-wire. He had turned against her after witnessing her murder a journalist, and his testimony was the nail in her coffin. With his help, the caves revealed not only cash and drugs, but the murder of Sheriff Robert Hendricks, preserved forever in my grandfather's hidden surveillance feeds. Patricia lived through her wounds, but her life was finished. She was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole, her wealth seized and her empire destroyed. The money went to the families she had victimized. Tommy Rodriguez got his land back. Michael entered witness protection, vowing to fight crime as a prosecutor. As for me and my team, we turned the caves into something new: the Judge William Garrett Memorial Education Center, a place to teach law enforcement about sacrifice, corruption, and justice. And every year, on the anniversary of Patricia's downfall, we gather at the cabin for Justice Day, our own barbecue celebration with the families she once tried to destroy. Patricia's story is a warning carved into stone. Power built on greed and cruelty will always collapse. She thought she could play God with people's lives, but in the end, she was crushed by the very empire she created. And my grandfather's cabin, once just a quiet mountain retreat, became the place where justice rose from the ashes of her ambition.
If you like this video, smash that thumbs up and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next.